Good morning. I, in turn, would like to thank Ms. Gonzalez for this privilege to speak to you all. I want to especially thank her because she's really taking it upon herself, her and her staff at the library, to organize a celebration of Black History Month every year. This has been happening for the past 4 or 5 years, if I recall correctly. And I think it's very important. It's very important for you all to have an opportunity to hear and listen to perspectives as to what Black History Month is all about. But like I said in previous times, this is not about a black person. This is not about a Hispanic. This is not about an Indian or an Anglo. Granted, black people suffered the brunt of slavery. But beyond that point, we all have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to be sure that this great nation of ours will continue to be perfected. And that cannot happen if you all are not aware of where we are coming from and where we need to be. Before we continue, I have a short video clip that I would like to show you all. And what the video clip is all about is giving you visuals of the struggles of icons that fought during the civil rights movements so that we can have the privilege, we can have the right to be free and equal in this great nation of ours. I would like to acknowledge Justin. Where is Justin? One of our students who graciously helped me in coming up with that video. So I'll ask the librarians right now to help me give you just a quick view of the video, and then we'll take it from there.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, oh, glory. Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against, yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, the spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots be on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, oh, glory. Now the war is not over, victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish. And when it's all done, we'll cry glory, oh glory, we'll cry glory, Selma is now for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. They march with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes, to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, his power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald eagle. The biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing, our music is the cuts that we bleed through. Somewhere in the dream we had an epiphany. Now we we right the wrongs in history. No one can win a war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. The coming of the Lord, my eyes have seen the glory. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh,
There you have it, just a glimpse of history. But beyond that, you see also a reality of the hopes, the dreams, and the aspirations of those brave men and women who stood firm in the face of death, that marched. And because of that, we all saw something monumental happened in this country in 2008 when for the first time, a black man was elected president of this country. It didn't happen by chance. And that is the message I have for you all, titled, Remember Selma, Never Lose Sight of Freedom. I don't think any one of you here was born, I know, during that time. Probably some of us, our parents were not even born yet. But what happened then has wider implications on our lives today and years to come. And as young people, sometimes we tend to immerse ourselves in everything that we have to do, forgetting the important things that we need to do. You live in a different age, whereby you're concerned most of the time about your updates on Facebook, about your updates on Instagram. And sometimes all of those things, you get wrapped up in them, not focusing on what is important. So I want to remind you that 50 years ago, civil rights leader John Lewis, who is now a Democratic congressman from Georgia, and many other civil rights activists lay bloodied and unconscious on a highway outside of Selma in Alabama. There is a movie titled Selma that is out. If you've seen it, you will notice that the song that was playing is the theme song in the movie. It talked about the fact that the war is not over. Victory is not won yet. There have been victories won, but the fight has to continue. And that fight has to continue with each of you taking full responsibility as to what your role is going to be. If you notice towards the end of the video, there were clips there of Cesar Chavez. That was very deliberate on my part because Cesar Chavez also stood for the same principles. The likes of Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and so many other icons of the freedom fight that took place in this country stood for. And living in an area like Laredo that is so homogeneous in many ways, we may tend to think that we are a separate group trying to fight for the same thing. But really, we are all one in this together, in the sense that we are all minorities trying to be sure that our rights are upheld, our rights are protected, and we have the opportunity and the privilege and the right to live in this country free, just as any other man or woman. John Lewis and his compatriots were clubbed by state troopers as they tried to lead a march to bring attention the denial of voting rights to Southern blacks. We learned that at the time this march was taking place, some of the counties in Alabama had populations that were 80% black people. 80%. But none of them was allowed to register to be able to vote. These civil rights icons and pioneers of the freedoms we continue to enjoy mobilized against all odds to bring to light the injustices, the disenfranchisement that was happening in their lives. And I see young people who are 18, eligible to vote, not participating in the democratic process. Statistics show that age groups between 18 and 29, you all have the lowest turnout when it comes to voting. I want to remind you today, in case you don't know, that the right to vote that you and I have earned in this country is not one that came about automatically. The right to vote was one that was fought for, sometimes with blood and lives of people who realized that we all cannot be equal if we do not have the right to the vote. So if you are 18 and you're not registered to vote, you are doing an injustice to yourself, to your community, and to these icons who stood up for freedoms, equality, and justice. In that vein, I want to remind you, if you're not registered, to register to vote. And if you are registered, to participate and exercise your democratic right in the democratic process in this country. These people had a vision. They mobilized. They knew what they wanted. They stood for principles. And that is the question I pose to you. What is it that you stand for? What is it that you want to achieve in your life? What goals do you have set out for yourselves? I look at you all. I see potential. Very great potential. But sometimes I am perplexed. Sometimes I get disappointed. And this may not apply to all of you. Maybe to some. And if this applies to you, maybe this is an opportunity for you to reflect, to think about what is it that you want to do. Because at this age, you must have some sort of goal in your mind already as to what is it that you want for yourself. And I give you an example. Every morning, around about 8:05, 8:10, I walk to the cafeteria to give you all a head start. And when I walk into the cafeteria and I see the cafeteria almost fully packed, and all I see is young boys and girls playing cards. I don't know what you call those cards. All I see is young boys and girls playing video games or all sorts of other things other than being here at the library or checking out a book from the library and spending time to educate yourselves. It bothers me. And I'm sure it bothers your librarians, your teachers, my fellow administrators, to know that you are losing out on precious time that you could be spending educating yourself. And instead of doing that, you engage in activities that there may be a place for them. There may be a time for them. But in my world, when you come to school, your frame of mind, your thinking processes must be all about studying. And I guarantee you, not a single minute spent paging or leafing through a book will leave you the same person. That is a guarantee I give to you. There are very few guarantees in this life, but that is one sure guarantee, that if you spend time, read a book, you will learn a new vocabulary word. You will come up with a new idea. You will look at how the author may phrase their sentence, their structure, their style of writing, and you may be able to adopt that as part of your own way. And it will help you to develop thinking processes that will make you become the kind of person that you need to be. So let's say your age is all about technology. Holding a book and paging through the pages of the book is old school. I grant you that. But the technologies you have, the same thing you can do from reading a hardcover book, you can do the same thing. There are so many apps that can help you develop your vocabulary. There are so many apps that can help you work on your math skills. But we don't do that. We spend time playing video games. We spend time on Facebook, or Footbook, as I like to call it. We spend time on Instagram. The time you're wasting right now, you will never be able to recoup again. So think for one moment. Because when John Lewis participated in the march to Selma, he was a young man. He was a young man who probably had so many things going for him, who probably thought, I have better things to do than to engage in a march that will probably gonna see me dead the moment I step foot. But he did not think about his own personal safety. He thought about what it will mean for generations to come to be able to have the privilege, the right to live as a free man in this country. Make no mistake, achieving the goals the likes of Martin Luther King did, achieving the goals the likes of Rosa Parks. Very recently, Rosa Parks' journal and diaries were made public. They are now in the Library of Congress. It is difficult to understand that moment she decided to sit in on that bus brought about a strain between her and the husband. The husband thought it was foolish for Rosa Parks to have chosen to sit in and allowed what happened to take place. Bear in mind that particular incident saw them almost bankrupt because nobody wanted to hire her after that instance. They did not fire her from her job, but they let her go. Same with the husband. Could not find a job because all of a sudden they saw her as a troublemaker. Well, our fight right now is a different kind of fight. We don't have to have bus sittings any longer. And like I said, while we have achieved some victories, there is still a long way to go. And the beautiful thing about this moment is to help each of you understand that you have a role to play. It is to help each of you understand that you are part of the society that is responsible to continue to bring about the change that we need to perfect our nation. But that cannot happen if we don't engage with our books. That cannot happen if we do not, at this point, at this tender age, have a purpose in mind, knowing very well what we need to do. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, and that granted the right to vote to minorities like you and myself. Sometime last year, the Supreme Court voted to get out some of the rights that were enshrined on that act. And what is happening in a different kind of way right now that will ensure that in the long run, you and I as minorities may not be able to vote the individuals, the candidates we want for them to represent us. So while victory may have been won, the fight is far from over. And that is where you come in. That is where you come in, because in any fight, there are going to be casualties. And when a group takes some casualties and there is no one to come after and replenish, if you will, then it will come to a point when that fight will not continue any longer. So that's why we need to remind you all. We need to remind you about the responsibilities that lie before you. So when Representative John Lewis and his fellows decided to march on March 7, 1965, they knew what was ahead of them. They knew what awaited them, but yet they pressed on. They marched on. In full view of the nation and the world, everybody witnessed the barbaric actions of the Alabama State Troopers. And that moment was so pivotal in the sense that it galvanized an entire nation to support the desire, to support the aspirations, to support the dreams of you and I to have equal rights and justice in this country. Martin Luther King had a dream, but he was never around to realize and see the fruits of his labor, if you will. So many icons, great civil rights icons that fought the good fight, are not around today to experience the freedoms that you and I have. But what they did, they left us with a legacy. They left you all with a legacy. And each of you is charged to carry on with that legacy. In no time, maybe 5, 10 years from now, Hispanics will be the majority in the state of Texas. In no time, Hispanics may be the majority, not only in Texas, but in many states. But while the majority is increasing in numbers, there are statistics that are very alarming that we need to be aware of. Because just getting majority in numbers is not enough to consolidate on the progress that has been made already. We can be great in numbers, but if we do not have something to show for it by way of educating ourselves, if we don't have something to show for it by way of graduating from college, then the few minority will continue to amass power and wealth in their hands to the point that they will continue to control our very own lives. So it behooves each of you, it is incumbent upon each of you to play your part, to purposely tell yourself every morning when you come here that you're here to learn, and to learn to the best of your ability. I look at you all, I see the privilege that you all have to be in a library that is stocked with books. I look at you all, I see the opportunity you have to have highly qualified teachers in your classrooms. I look at you all, I see the privileges that you have to have the opportunity to be transported to school, to be fed at school, to have a chair to sit on, to have a well-lit room, air-conditioned, and so on and so forth. To have textbooks, supplemental materials, everything and anything that is needed for you to be successful has been given to you. I always tell students, every opportunity I have, you have no idea. You have no idea how privileged you are. Or maybe you do. You probably just don't care. Because I'm sure in your social studies classes, in your sociology classes, you may have studied about young boys and girls your age in faraway countries and lands that will do anything, that will give anything to have the privilege that you all have. You have it. Use it. Don't abuse it. Because 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to have to look back and ask yourself, what did I do with my time at United South High School? Because the activities you engage in today will really form the core of who you're going to be as an individual in the long run. These are your formative years, if you will. These are the moments when in your heart you have some kind of a purpose, thinking about what is it that you want to be, thinking about what your mark on society is going to be. They marched, and 50 years later, this country elected the first African American president. The realization of the dream for Dr. Martin Luther King had come at a very heavy price, but it did come. And it is going to continue. It is going to continue. They marched on Selma. What is your Selma moment? What is it that you are confronted with that you may see not troopers in the real sense, but troopers in a metaphoric sense, that you may think this is impossible for me to be able to cross over this bridge in order to be able to attain what I want in my life? What is your Selma moment that is stopping you to press on, to march on, so that you can cross to the other side and be able to do what you set out to do? Representative John Lewis later recounted that day. He said he went on the march knowing fully well what the outcome was going to be. What did he do? He got a backpack. And in that backpack, he said he had an orange. He had an apple. He had his toothbrush, toothpaste. And he had books in his backpack, preparing, knowing very well that he was going to be incarcerated in jail. And while he is there, he wanted to be sure that he could spend his time reading, educating himself. Because he realized that the only way to beat the system at the time was for him to have an education. And I charge you today to invest in your learning. I charge you today to invest time studying, because it is the one and only guarantee in this life, the one and only guarantee investment you can ever make for yourself. You invest in stocks, the markets can go down, you may lose that money. You invest in a home, fire can come and crash it down. You invest in a car, it can crash. But once you invest in education, you have that knowledge in you. Nobody will ever be able to take it away from you. They will have to kill you. Education is a sure investment. And it is because of that, somebody like John Lewis, from being somebody who was beaten with scars and a broken skull, will be able to stand in the House of Representatives today and ask and ask that the trail from Selma to Montgomery becomes part of our nation's history. And because of that, in 1996, it became a historic trail for this country. What is your Selma moment? Are you going to stand up and march across the bridge, whatever that bridge may be? Or are you going to stand and see troopers with batons, with tear gas, and be held back and not try to realize your potential? Remember Selma. Never lose sight of the freedoms our civil rights icon fought for. 50 years later, we have a black president. I don't want to wait long to be able to see a woman president. I don't want to wait long to be able to see a Hispanic president. And who knows? That person may be sitting right here, right now. You may think to yourselves that, well, that's so far-fetched. It is not. Nobody thought President Obama could have done it, but he did. So never doubt the potential that lies in you. Never doubt what you can possibly do. While we may not be in a position to have a Selma moment as it happened in the likes of John Lewis and Martin Luther King, every moment that is confronted with us on any given day, whether it be here at school, whether it be at home, on the playground, or wherever you may be, just remember that you are the author and the finisher of your own destiny. You must never allow anybody else to define who you are. Because the moment you do that, you are surrendering your power and your will to do differently to the other person. Issues of civil rights may not rank very highly in your thinking processes. But I want you all, as you study in your social studies classes, as these issues are discussed in depth, as you are all being made aware of the history of this country, that something inside you be ignited. That something inside you tells you to strive to do better, so that you and the generation to come will have it better than you and I have experienced it right now. So, while you're spending time on your gadgets, I want to ask you to do something. Because we know that increasingly it is becoming very difficult for you all to spend time reading. But I ask you to immerse yourself on issues about civil rights. I want you, if you have a chance to watch the movie Selma and so many other visual representations of what the civil rights movement was all about. Because with that, you will begin to have an appreciation. You will begin to understand. You will come to realize that the fight is not over. That each of you has a role to play. And if you all just sit down and not pay attention to what is happening, just maybe a time may come when we may go back in a different form, of course, the way things used to be. And that will be a tragedy. So that is why I am especially grateful to Ms. Gonzalez and the library that every February, as far as I can remember, this has been organized for you all to have a reminder, if you will. A reminder about Selma. Well, Selma happened far away. But now think about Ferguson. Think about what happened in New York and so many other places where we are seeing incidents of injustice rearing their ugly heads up again. Who knows? Who knows where this is leading? And that's why it's important. It's important that you do what you have to do. I am not originally from this country, but I will forever be indebted to this country for what it has given me. My country of Sierra Leone bore the brunt of the slave trade. As a matter of fact, the name of my capital city, Freetown, came about because when slaves eventually were freed from this land, they were able to establish a country we call Liberia today. It came on the news very recently, including my own country, because of the Ebola crisis. Liberia essentially was established as a nation of freed slaves from this land that went back to have their own country. Right next door is my country, Sierra Leone. And Freetown came about because it was a place where freed slaves settled. To this day, there is the replicas of the chains that were used to chain my ancestors, brought against their will into this country. But that is a thing of the past. We need to remember it in order for us to be able to put things in perspective. But the kind of slavery that we encounter today, sometimes it is self-imposed. And we really cannot be free if we don't free our own minds. And the way to free our own minds, I cannot say enough, is for us to educate ourselves. In closing, I want to read the proclamation from the President Barack Obama, proclaiming February 2015 as Black History Month. It reads thus: for generations, the story of American progress has been shaped by the inextinguishable beliefs that change is always possible and a brighter future lies ahead. With tremendous strength and abiding resolve, our ancestors, some of whom were brought to this land in chains, have woven their resilient dignity into the fabric of our nation and taught us that we are not trapped by mistakes of history. It was this truth that found expressions as foot soldiers and freedom riders sat in and stood up, marched and agitated for justice and equality. This audacious movement gave birth to a new era of civil rights and voting rights. And slowly we renewed our commitment to an ideal at the heart of our founding. No matter who you are, what you look like, how modest your beginnings, or the circumstances of your birth, you deserve every opportunity to achieve your God-given potential. As we mark National African American History Month, we celebrate giants of the civil rights movement and countless other men and women whose names are etched in the hearts of their loved ones and the cornerstones of the country they helped to change. We pause to reflect on our progress and our history, not only to remember, but also to acknowledge our unfinished work. We reject the false notion that our challenges lie only in the past, and we recommit to advancing what has been left undone. Brave Americans did not struggle and sacrifice to secure fundamental rights for themselves and others only to see those rights denied to their children and their grandchildren. Our nation is still racked with division and poverty. Too many children live in crumbling neighborhoods, cycling through substandard schools and being affected by daily violence in their communities. And Americans of all races have been and seen their wages and income stagnate, while inequality continues to hold back hard-working families and their entire communities. But the trajectory of our history gives us hope. Today, we stand on the shoulders of courageous individuals who endured the thumps of billy clubs, the blasts of fire hoses, and the pain of watching dreams defied and sometimes even denied. We honor them by investing in those around us and doing all we can to ensure that every American can reach their full potential. Our country is at its best when everyone is treated fairly and has the chance to build the future they seek for themselves and their family. This means providing opportunity for every person in this country. Opportunities for each one to access a world-class education. Opportunities for everyone to be able to afford safe housing and the job training that will prepare each of you for careers of tomorrow. Like the countless quiet heroes who worked and bled far from the public eye, we know that with enough effort, with empathy and perseverance, people who love their country can change it. Together, we can help our nation live up to its immense promise. This month, February, as we celebrate Black History Month, let us continue that unending journey toward a more just, a more equal, and a more perfect union. Signed, President Barack Obama. And the work lies in your hands. The work lies in all of us to be able to press on, to be able to honor the legacy of those who've come before us, knowing very well they may not live to see this day today, but thinking about the generations to come. And that is the spirit. That is the American spirit, in the sense that you do what you can for your own self-actualization, but you also do it in the interest of the larger community. So go forth, study hard, work hard, because it is only through hard work that you all will become successful and become the president, the chief justice, the doctor, the lawyer, the administrator, the teacher, the nurse, whatever it is that your heart desires to do. The possibilities are endless, but we've got to take hold of them. And that starts right here on this campus today. Thank you all for coming.